friends, welcome to My Sew Bliss. Today's video feels a little bit special because I'm going to be sharing a tutorial on how to make a pattern that I created. It's the first pattern I've ever made and put out into the world. I'm working on creating more, but for some reason this one I got the idea for, and like within a month I was like, I have to have it out, and it just, the timing of it worked out well. But now it's been a year and I haven't even done a tutorial on it. I'm like, what am I doing? So I am so excited to be sharing with you guys a tutorial on how to make the woven jelly roll basket, which is this super cute basket right here. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. It's so cute. You can have a handle, that's an option, or you cannot have a handle, also an option. I also love the option of putting like a handle right here, swinging low. This one has stuffing on it, and then another one on this side I think would be super cute. But I especially love these and made these with the idea of Easter in mind and having Easter baskets, these being Easter baskets customized. But honestly, I've been using them for other things as well, like organization in my kids' rooms. They have baskets now full of their toys. Another thing that I like to use it for is a plant. So I just have the pot sitting in there. Let me try and pull it out without breaking my plant. So I just have the pot sitting in there, which I think is really cute. And that also is to show you that there's two sizes. So this is the small size, which is 6.5 inch basket. And then this is a 10-inch basket. So you can see the difference. Now, a jelly roll, if you're in the quilting world, is this thing right here. This is called a jelly roll. It's 42 pieces, 42 strips of fabric that are about 40 to 42 inches long. It's usually the whole line of fabric, whatever line that is. So this is a fun one. It's like a birthday theme. So I was going to make a birthday like basket. I thought that'd be cute. But today I'm going to show you how to make the small one with this. This is like a half-size jelly roll. I don't know if it has like a special name actually, but I saw this and I was like, these colors are so perfect for Easter. I need to make a woven jelly roll basket out of it, and it would be perfect for a tutorial. So I'm going to share how to make, like I said, the small version, but I'm also going to make a video on how to make the big version as well, because it's slightly different. It's not like a huge difference, but I thought it's my own pattern. Why not make both and do it that way? So, and you can see in this one, this doesn't have a handle. This does have a handle. So that's optional. You can do it however you want. But they sit very nicely. They're super sturdy. They're made with Soft and Stable, which is a product that I absolutely love. I use it in a lot of bag making. I have a lot of friends that make it or use it in their patterns for bags. And so it just worked out perfectly for this. So it's collapsible, it's soft, but it also like stands on its own and has that structure that you want most of the time in a basket. So that's why I absolutely love these. So for this, let's see, I made, what did I do? I made, so this is obviously one jelly roll made this basket. This is the large one. And then one jelly roll made these two baskets. So I obviously like kept the colors. This is the warm colors. This is the cool colors. I just thought that was fun. This was another one. So many cute options. You don't necessarily have to use a jelly roll. One that I started working on for Easter is this one. So I'm in the process of making it, and I thought I would show you guys. This one, I just picked out fat quarters, and for the small one, fat quarters work. For the large one, you need longer strips. So half yard pieces would be better. And I just kind of mixed and matched, and I'm really loving the colors on this one. But yeah, I just kind of went through my stash and had fun, and then cut the strips to whatever length I needed, to whatever amount I needed as well. So all that to say, supplies that you're going to need for this project: fabric. You can use a jelly roll, you can use fat quarters, or yardage, whatever you have on hand. We just need the amount for whatever size you're making, which is all in the pattern. There's a list of like the cutting chart and then exactly what you're going to need, and then strips, because we're obviously keeping them as strips of fabric. And then even on the bottom, if you want, you can have a woven style on both sides, or this one I liked to show that that one's a solid on that side. So many options. It's so fun. But so fabric, other than that, you're going to need soft and stable. Depending on what basket you're going to make is how much soft and stable you'll need. So you can get all that information in the pattern even before you buy it. You can get that as well. And then if you want to make the handle, you can use webbing on the inside. I was also thinking it would be really nice to use this flexible wire that I've gotten online, just on Amazon. I was gonna say Joann's, but they're going out of business, guys, so we can't use them. But you can get it on Amazon, and it's a flexible wire that you could thread through here to make it even stiffer, or we could put more soft and stable through it to make it stand on its own as well. So that, I think I'm gonna try in this next basket that I share with you guys. I think that will add a little nice touch to it as well. So other than those things, a couple things that are more just helpful for making this pattern are going to be a stick of glue. This is washable, acid-free, non-toxic. I think this is just like the Target brand, and helps so much when you're in this process and you want to pick it up and move it around and do this. Glue with an iron, and I have a wool ironing mat. You don't have to have that, but glue stick and iron, super helpful. And the other thing that's super helpful is straws or turning tools. These are my favorite straws to use. I also have the turning tools, but for some reason I always gravitate towards these, probably because they're easy to find based on the color. But these are going to help you turn the tubes of fabric, because you're going to have either small tubes or large tubes and a bunch of them to turn right side out. So this makes it so much easier, and once you get the hang of it, it's super fast. So other than those things, you're just gonna need your basic sewing supplies. So let's get started making our small woven jelly roll basket. So to get started, I'm gonna take this jelly roll and open it up. Like I said earlier, you could also just use fabric that you have at home. It doesn't have to be a jelly roll, and that's where I think this could be so fun. And I forgot to show you guys one that I actually haven't even finished, but I love it. And I used 2 jelly rolls. How fun is this? I just used, well, I did use jelly rolls, but you could just cut strips of like 2 different colors. This could be addicting. I could have like a million of these. So I never finished the bottom, but it's so cute. It's so cute. I just love it. So that's a fun idea, using just 2 different colors or whatever you want. But I am going to start by opening this up, and then in the pattern it tells you how many strips you're going to need and what sizes. So for this one, since this isn't a full jelly roll, I honestly, until I bought this, didn't know that existed. I thought like a jelly roll is just like the, what is it, 40 or 42 pieces? It's 40. And that's all there was. But lo and behold, we found this and I fell in love. So look how pretty. Okay, so I'm taking my strips. If you don't have a jelly roll or half of a jelly roll, you're just gonna cut out these strips, however many you need, and then I'm gonna take them over to my sewing machine. And this is where it's kind of nice, just like doing the same thing over and over for a little bit. That's one thing I love about sewing, or especially sewing like quilts, because you do a lot of repetition. But this, we're putting right sides together and sewing down our line. And because I only have half the amount of pieces, I'm just gonna do all of them. Yep, no, might leave 1 or 2 for handles. Probably 2 pieces out for handles. I don't know what color I would do though. That's where I'm struggling right now. But I'm gonna do however many pieces I need really. And then, yeah, we're just sewing them right sides together down the whole strip and continuously sewing until we get through all of our strips that we need. After you've sewn all of your strips of fabric, then we're going to take them and cut them apart. I chain pieced mine. If you didn't chain your piece yours, you're not going to have this problem, but that's what I really like this tool for. I'm actually not sure what it's called, but it has a rotary cutting blade in the middle of it, and then these little blockers so you don't cut yourself, but you can just slide it like that and cut your pieces apart. So it's really great if you do a lot of chain piecing, which pretty much every time I make a quilt or something that's repetitive, I do chain piecing. So I'm just going to cut them apart. You don't have to have this tool. Obviously, you could use scissors. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, now I'm going to cut them apart, and then I will show you how I turn the tubes right sides out and get those ironed. So for this next step, that's when I use these 2 straws. One's a really thick, like boba-like straw, and then one's just like a skinnier straw that will fit inside of the other one. So it doesn't matter, or you could use a turning tool, whatever you have on hand. But I just stick the larger straw inside of the tube, and then the little one is going to push about 1/2 inch of that fabric into the large straw, and then I'm going to push it so the fabric's going to go up and around, I guess, the little straw. And so I'm going to push it all the way, and this is, as I'm doing this, it's turning it right sides out. So it's like, see how that's scrunched up? And once I get it past the point where I started, I just take that off and then push it down. And now I have a tube turned right sides out, and sometimes the ends are kind of like stuck, but you can use the end of the straw to help get the ends out. But then I have this nice long tube quickly turned right sides out. So I'm going to do that to all of them and get them ready to iron. Once you have all of the strips turned right sides out, now we're going to iron them really well. And I like to iron them so that the seam that we sewed is right down the middle. So the front is going to look nice and smooth and flat. And then the back will just have that seam right down the middle. So I'm going to do that to all my pieces. After you have all of your pieces ironed, we're then going to cut them to the lengths that we need, which you can find on page 2 of the pattern. And again, it's going to depend on what size you're doing. So like I've said multiple times, I'm doing the small basket. So that's why I have these 1-inch strips. And I'm going to be cutting however many I need based on the chart. After you have your pieces cut out, we're then going to lay out our woven pattern, like I said. And I like to do this on an ironing mat. So this is just my wool mat. I have some fabric underneath to protect the table underneath. But I like to do it on here because then it's easier to keep it all together. And like I've said at the beginning, I also use a glue stick and an iron to hold it together. So if you have to move it from one spot to another, it kind of makes things tricky. So that way I just do it right on here. So you could also just do it on an ironing board or whatever you can iron on. And I start by doing the horizontal pieces first. And because I'm doing this pastel colored one, I'm kind of doing it in like a rainbow order. So you just lay them out horizontally first, and then we'll go to vertical. So now I can start putting my vertical pieces in. I like to start in the middle, but remember whatever's on the ends is gonna match up and get sewn together anyways. So keep that in mind when you're putting what colors you want together, or if you don't want like the same colored strip matching up, keep that in mind. So yeah, usually I just start in the middle and then I'll start weaving. It doesn't matter if you go under first or over first, but you just want to make sure you do the opposite all the way out on either side. Once you have all your strips laid out how you wanted and woven together, make sure everything looks good. I like to go around and kind of tighten it up as much as possible, and just kind of scooch them until everything is like tight. It doesn't have to be perfect though, but it just makes it look a little better and lay nicer. If you want to iron it as well, that's a good thing to do. But next I'm going to take my glue stick and make sure it's a washable glue stick. It's just a cheap one, but I like to go and put the glue stick and glue the edges so that I can pick this whole thing up and it's not going to fall apart. Because right now if I tried to move it, it would fall apart. So I just put a little bit of glue and then push my strip down, and I'm going to do this around the whole edge. And once I have the glue in place, I'm also going to iron the edges, and that kind of sets the glue. If you don't like the glue, you can wash it out afterwards as well, but I have not really noticed any difference with or without glue. So then, like I said, I'm ironing over the top of it, kind of setting that glue, and those pieces will stay nice and in place so that when we're moving it around like this, it's going to stay in place. There's no shifting. We don't have to worry about it falling apart on us, and it just makes things so much nicer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on all sides of my piece. Once you have your woven piece all done, we're then going to treat this as one piece of our fabric now, and we're going to turn it right sides together in half and line up our horizontal pieces so that we can sew them together to create our circle. Then we're also going to take our soft and stable and turn it right sides together and sew down at 1/2 inch. So let's head over to our sewing machine. One thing that I like to do when sewing these strips together like this is just sewing right along this vertical one, but making sure I'm catching all of these horizontal pieces, and the colors should match up. So I'm just stitching right along this vertical piece right next to it. Before we do any trimming, if you want to turn it right sides out and check and make sure it's how you like and it looks good. Our goal here is to make it look like you can't even find the seam, which is kind of how it's working out this time for me too. So I'm very happy with that. I'm a little concerned about this piece right here. I think it got tucked in, so I might unpick that and restitch that part right there. But other than that, you can see how, because we just sewed right next to it, it just seamlessly transitions to this next one. And you can barely tell that that seam is even there, which is exactly what I want. So I can turn it wrong sides out. And if you need to fix something, let's go ahead and fix it. So you can see, like, sometimes it'll get twisted in the middle, just so you know. You can always twist them back, but if you need to, go ahead and glue those pieces in place if that bothers you as well. But once you have everything fixed, we're then going to trim any excess that you have off. So this one was a little extra long, so I'm just going to trim those so everything's like the same length, about 1/2 inch. It could be 1/4 inch, but I'd rather just stick with 1/2 inch so I don't worry about cutting something off on accident. I am going to go and fix that one real quick though. I feel like I have a couple of those turned that got scrunched. So fix those, and then we are ready for the next step after trimming. Once you have those 2 pieces sewn and trimmed, I'm then going to take my fabric and my soft and stable, and I'm going to turn my fabric right sides out. So you know the right side and the wrong side based off of those center seams that we ironed down. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes I actually really like the look of the seam and how it looks. Maybe one of these times I'll actually keep that as the right side. I think that might be like a cool effect. But I'm going to put my fabric on top of the soft and stable, and I like to match up the seams that we just sewed. I'm going to do that, get everything to lay nicely. It's only going to cover half of our fabric. I don't need to push it all the way in, just partially like so. And then our fabric is going to fold in half. So on the small one and the large one, they're different, but you're just going to do half of the amount of our horizontal strips. So once I get it right on there, lined up, I'm just going to fold it in half and push that fabric inside of that soft and stable. You might need to pull the soft and stable down a little bit, but make sure it's even all the way around. But you should have equal amounts on either side for your strips. So once you have everything lined up, kind of want to make sure this top edge that we folded looks nice. I kind of stretch it out, you kind of play with it for a minute, but once it's looking nice, I'm then going to take it and sew these 3 layers together. So we should have a layer of our strips, a layer of the soft and stable, and then another layer of the strips on the other side. So again, match up the colors. It's probably going to look the best that way. And you can just do a basting stitch. That's what I suggest right along here. So about at 1/2 inch is what I'm going to be stitching at. And if you want to pin it, you could also pin that in place so everything stays lined up. Once you have that basting or regular stitch done along the bottom, I'm going to trim this so it's all the same length. I want it to be about 1/4 inch from my stitching, because we're going to stitch it with the bottom base and bind it. So I'll just go along and do my trimming first. Once you have the edges of the basket ready to go, we're going to set that off to the side and then create the base or bottom of the basket as well. And I'm going to do this by creating my woven piece for the bottom. And you just want to create however many strips with the sizes you want. And then I'm going to weave them together just like I did for this piece. So I'm going to do my weaving now and then glue and iron the edges together as well. Also, I'll be creating 2 of these. I would like both sides of the base to be woven. In the pattern, I do talk about using a fat quarter and just using a solid piece of fabric for one side and then a woven piece for the other. But I have extra strips and pieces, so I'm just going to create 2 woven bases so that we can put those together to create the bottom of the basket. Once you have both base pieces woven or ready to go, if you have the fat quarter, you could do that as well. But you should have a template piece. It's a quarter of a circle, and you're going to trace it onto both of your pieces. I haven't done this one yet. But before I cut out my circle, I actually like to go and stitch around it so that it doesn't fall apart when I actually cut it, because then a lot of times you're cutting off where you glued in certain spots. So I just like to secure it first, and I'm going to do that to both of my pieces so that we can get them ready to sew onto the sides. After you have that stitching done, we're then going to cut right along it. Make sure you don't cut through your stitching or you're going to have to resew it, but I just cut about 1/8 of an inch away from it. Okay, and once you have both pieces cut out and your soft and stable piece, we're just going to sandwich them together. Make sure that the wrong sides are together with that soft and stable, creating that sandwich. And then I'm going to baste around the edge of all of this. This is a good time to clip it together so that it stays in place and there's no shifting as you sew it. Once you have that base piece ready, we're then going to stitch it onto the side piece. So I just like to set it on there. Usually you can turn it upside down and divide it into 4ths if you want. Because it's a small one, I'm not too worried, but I like to take pins for this step and pinch the side, the raw edge of the bottom piece and the side piece, and pin or clip that in place. And then I'm going to go around. I'm going to kind of space it around first, and then if I want to go back and add more. But if you're worried about like fitting it correctly, you can definitely divide it into 4ths and then match those up and then clip it. But it should fit pretty nicely. Longer edges. There we go. Add a few more. You just want to make sure all that raw edge is going to be caught when we stitch it. So make sure everything's lined up and ready to go. Okay, now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. I'll show you how I like to stitch it in place. To sew the base in place, it's easiest just to push this side to the side. And I'll just start with one edge. See if I can get it under there without moving a clip. You might need to move a clip out of the way. There we go. And I'm stitching at about 1/4 of an inch. If you need to stitch at 1/2 an inch, that's all right as well. And I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end to really secure it in place. after you have that edge sewn, one thing that I like to do, because sometimes I miss it, is I take my fingers on the inside and push at that seam I sewed and make sure that all the pieces, all the fabric, there's no hole that might have just accidentally slipped through the cracks, because that's the worst when you finish everything and then you're like, oh, there's a hole and I need to fix it. So now we have our basket. It's getting there. It's almost there. So now I'm going to bind the edges. You can create binding with a fat quarter. You would want to use bias binding so that you can do it in the circle and it works out really nicely. Okay, so I ended up making bias tape with the jelly roll because I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it. And I barely just made enough. It does have a lot of like seams in it, but if you want to match it perfectly, if you don't have a fat quarter or it just works out easier for you, it still is an option. So I just did it like the instructions said, sewed the strips together and then cut them on the bias, sewed them back together, and yeah. So now I also have other videos for how to make bias tape if you guys are interested in that too. I could also make an updated one. I'm not sure, can't remember how old it is, but now I'm going to take it and pin it around the raw edge, and you can kind of like pull it tight. It gives a little bit because of that bias that we cut it on. It'll stretch a little bit and should fit nicely around the basket. And at this point, I'm going to stitch it at 1/4 of an inch. I forgot to mention, if you needed to trim the edges of your basket, again, you could with all those layers, but I don't think I need to. I did it close enough to the edge. And one thing that I've decided to do with binding lately, which I don't know if it's like accurate or if it's just a hack or the lazy way of doing it, I guess, is I'm just going to cut that off. And then when I come back around, I'm going to have this one tucked in on itself like so. So there's no raw edge. And then this one will just lay over the top of it. And once I have it sewn, I'll just trim it right here. So that way all the raw edges are hidden, but I'm not like reconnecting them. I feel like I always have a hard time with that. So I just decided, like, why am I doing that? If it doesn't bother me and the project's for me, then, and a lot of times you can't even tell the difference. So sometimes it doesn't matter if it's not for me or not. So I'm going to stitch about 1/4 of an inch. You want to make sure when you do stitch, if it's 1/4 of an inch, because we want to be able to cover that. We might need to trim it a little more. So if you stitch greater than 1/4 of an inch, you won't be able to, you won't have as much binding to cover it. So just keep that in mind. That's why we do the binding that we do and the size that we do and the seam allowance that we do. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to stitch it just like how I stitched the bottom and the side pieces together. So just with my presser foot right here on top and then stitching around. After you have the binding sewn on, we can then flip it over. And I do have a couple raw edges that didn't get covered, so I'm going to make sure to do that. But I want to show you first. So once that's sewn on, you flip it over to cover that stitching that you did, flip it in place, and then either you can stitch it by hand or you can machine stitch it, which you would just stitch it on this side and stitch along there. So again, this is a great time to use those clips, and you're kind of just easing it in there. There might be some spots that need to be pulled and adjusted, but that's why we make our bias binding. So now I think I'm just going to do it by machine because I like to leave the binding on the inside anyways, so it won't really be seen anyways. So just go slow because it is a lot of layers for your machine to stitch through, but we are almost finished with our woven basket. So let's get this bias binding stitched into place. Once you have the binding done on your basket, sometimes I like to leave it with the binding out, but a lot of times I turn it the other way and have the binding on the inside. I just prefer that smooth look on that edge. So whatever you prefer, I'm gonna sew my strips together and get them ready to turn into handles. And I'm just using 2 pieces of my jelly roll strip. I left 2 out, one for the binding and one for handles that I didn't sew. So I'm just gonna create the sized piece that we need by sewing 1/2 inch seams on either side. Obviously you could cut this from any fabric, or you could use webbing that's already like matching your fabric and is a cute print or something. There's so many cute ones out there. Or you could use other fabric as well, and that's why I suggest having like a fat quarter or 2 extra. But I'm just gonna sew, like I said, 1/2 inch on either side of this. Okay, and then I'm going to use my tube turning method to turn it right sides out. And then I'm going to give it a good iron. Make sure that since I have 2 seams on this one, I'm just going to keep them on either side. Usually I would just thread this through. This is just some webbing. This one I just got at Joann's, the going out of business sale. So I just have it just in case. But I wanted to try, I'm not sure if it's going to work. Someone tell me, give me your opinion. We'll see how long it lasts. But this is soft and stable. So this is what I made the bag out of. And I'm like, okay, it's going to give it more shape and maybe hold it up. It's a thin piece, like it's a small piece, obviously. So I have a safety pin on the end of it. I'm going to thread it through here. And we're just going to try it. I'm going to see if it works or not to be a handle. And I'll let you guys know. But yeah, usually I would just use webbing that's just like a plain webbing. You can get it on Amazon or any shop that sells bag making supplies usually has it. And there's some really cute ones out there if you don't want to cover it in fabric. But this one, I don't have anything that would like match it well enough. So we're gonna just do it out of fabric, and I think it's gonna look really cute. So once I get it threaded through, my soft and stable is a little bit longer, which is totally fine right now. We can trim it in a second. I can take my safety pin off, and I just like to take it over to my ironing board, and you can trim the soft and stable first or iron first, whatever is easier for you. But I'm just gonna tuck these raw edges in and make sure it's even all the way around. And I'm tucking them in about 1/2 inch. And that's just gonna also, like, if you want a longer handle, you can totally make it longer than the pattern says. You can make it shorter than the pattern says. You can make 2 handles that just go on the sides. It's super cute. But okay, so there I have my raw edges. So I'm gonna trim the soft and stable, and I'm going to iron that so that it stays in place. But then we can take it over to our basket, and on the pattern it says like where to place it exactly, and then you're going to stitch the handle in place. I like to do a square with an X through it, and I think it just looks really nice. So I'm going to do that next, and then measure the other side, and it just, oh, it's gonna be so cute. Okay guys, once you are done putting your handles on, you are all done with your woven jelly roll basket. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed all the tips and tricks I was able to give you, and I hope you enjoyed this pattern. I had so much fun making it and making all of these baskets. I seriously cannot stop making baskets. They're so much fun and so dang cute. I love how this one turned out. The soft and stable in the handle seems to be working out really well so far. Hopefully it stays that way. Or I can find the wire and maybe put it in the next one and show you guys. So if you make one of these baskets, please tag me in it. Please share it with me. I love, love, love to see it. And I will try and make a video on the large one as well, so that way you can see the difference in how those two are made. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to subscribe for more sewing tutorials, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!